discourse so far has been very enriching, I must say. A lot of questions have been raised. Very probing questions were raised by Sujata ji just a while ago. And of course, who will give the answer? Now, we have a group of very eminent panelists. They may not have all the answers, but probably they have models, they have experiences, wealth of experiences which they would definitely share, which will enrich our discussion. And as we start, generally I am a storyteller, so I was thinking of a story, and what came to my mind is those four blind men who went to figure out an elephant. And so each of them had their own idea of that elephant. And I think we have come to a situation where the theme resilient systems building sustainable futures that last, we have an image of that elephant which may not be the whole elephant. Because how the elephant looks like, we all have a piece of it in our heads. And that is why somebody will talk about institutional sustainability, somebody will programmatic sustainability, somebody will talk about environmental sustainability, somebody will talk about something else, and then similarly about resilience. And I really appreciated the keynote where she was talking about regenerate. You know, there's a new word which was introduced. It's not a new word, but for our discussion here, regenerate. Regeneration is a very, very powerful word, you know, which goes very well with resilience. And so, as we come here with the issue of the theme resilient systems building sustainable futures that last, at a time when there is emergency. It's not that we can do it tomorrow. You know, that is the emergency that was sounded even by you all when we started off, and then by the keynote speaker, that there is an emergency happening and the interventions are there, but whether it is far and few, we do not know. That also we're going to explore. And then we can see what you have done, what you have been doing. I think that will really enrich, and it will be a learning for all of us as we listen to the panelists. If there is time, then we'll also go and take certain questions or certain comments from the floor as well. So to open us out, the question that comes first is that when we speak about resilience, what does building resilient systems actually mean within this whole development ecosystem? What does it mean to build resilient systems? And that would be an important starting point. So this question, you all can take the way in the same order that you are sitting, from your own context. Feel free to share your own experiences of how you have tried to build resilient ecosystems, what has worked and maybe what has not worked. I think that is also important. No, not that everything works. So, let's get started. Mr. Sahu, if you can start off. I know that you are the first one on this side, and then we can continue like that. Yes, please, can you?
Thank you very much, for setting up the context. Okay. Of course, I come from a business background as well as CSR background, because I have been running a foundation also, created the foundation, running as a chief operating officer, Schneider Electric India Foundation, almost 16, 17 years. But at the same time, I'm also in the business role. Okay. So I will explain, I think, because whenever, and I always try to adapt the best business practices into this is a big impact. I does not come from any CSR. I don't have any CSR qualification. I'm an engineer and management. Okay. So when I started with the CSR first, okay, and I was discussing with the many NGOs. Okay. So in fact, it was a little bit cultural shock for me. you know. Because there was absolute, I'm talking 2008, okay? No, 2004 first time, okay? So because during tsunami. So when I discuss, I was expecting, everything system approach, everything to be like, clearly defined, and, it was not there. In fact, how it is related to like, resilient system, because in fact, I think morning there was discussion about like, the how capability building of the NGO. Because if you look at the overall like the resilience, building resilient system, we're talking about even the resilience of the institutions, correct, and or the organization. When you talk about, let's say, social economic development, even the NGO itself plays a very, very important role, correct, okay. And morning there was already discussion, most of the, not only the Indian NGOs, even the whole Southeast Asia, or in our subcontinents, okay, it is all by leader started, the organization started by a charismatic leader. As long as the leader is there, it is running, but there is no effort actually to build the next level of leadership. And I think that is, so that means we are actually one of the main, I will say, component of the resilient system, which is like, building resilient system, the NGO, when you talk about socio-economic development, that NGO itself is not sustainable. Then how can we think about building the, the community more resilient? So I think just one thought I'm saying, but of course I will. So I think that is where I think, we need to really, particularly all the NGOs, have to think about how it has to be more process-driven, how more system-driven, the capacity building of the, what do you say, let's say the employees in the like, the team, okay. I think that's many, like, I think that not enough is, of course, like, people are doing, but I will say from an organization, like, corporate perspective, I will say that is not, or the NGOs are really not focusing on these areas, okay. Just, I think, one part, okay, but I will really come to my main topic, okay. So I think we know today the climate, it is one of the biggest challenge. In fact, last week only, I was in Jharkhand, in some of the tribal areas, Gumla, okay, Khunti, these are the tribal districts. And, so we're like, so we have deployed some climate smart village. So I have gone with some PhD students, okay. And we visited almost 12 petrol pumps. There was no diesel, okay. Then I was thinking, now the next, like, now, like after the monsoon, all the tractors will start flowing, correct, okay. There will be, requirement of diesel for the, like, the diesel engines, like irrigation pumps also, because most of their still three-phase electricity is not available. It is all run by most of the diesel, okay. So can we think, and there are many NGOs who are working actually for the livelihood, and rural livelihood is predominantly agriculture. And for agriculture, you require irrigation, tractor, and look at how the external shock, which is right now, the Iran things, okay, is impacting, our farmers. I think just I'm connecting the dots, okay. So now what we are doing for that, I think this, if this continues, I hope, I think probably it will stop, okay, but if it continues, it will be a big challenge, correct, okay. So of course, I think that is one dimension. So if you look at most of the, like, rural areas, particularly UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, although the the villages are electrified, correct, okay, but most of the houses are only electrified with a single phase. In many areas still they do not have a three-phase. That means they cannot run, like, irrigation pumps. And if you don't have irrigation pumps, then you are forced to use diesel. And with diesel, definitely you cannot do an agriculture. And that led to many things, like, migration, only one crop and all those things, okay. So we have been doing solar pumps. We have been working with Pradhan. We have already done around 1,000 solar irrigation pump. Each is benefiting, like, 20 farmers, okay. So it has been really, over, let's say, last 5 years we have done that. But when we implemented those things, we realized, of course, it solved the problem of, let's say, irrigation, correct? Okay. But to ensure the sustainability of that, what we first did is building a community, capacity building of the community. So we formed SSGs, a solar user group. In fact, not SSG, SUG, solar user group among the SSG communities, okay? And the solar pump, in fact, was finally handed over to the SUG. It's a group of women. And we also established a training center to build the capability of those so that they are able to run it, correct? Okay, and it has been running fantastic, okay. But then we realized, okay, the irrigation pumps are there, and in India, if you look at, their capacity utilization is only 30%. Because most of the time, they don't require water, correct? Okay. And the solar panel was lying idle. It has not been used, and it is quite good capacity. So we thought at the same time, the villagers were going for, let's say, for rice milling to almost 10 kilometer, 15 kilometer. They're producing mustard, but they were buying oil from outside. Okay. They're producing turmeric. They're again selling to the middleman. Okay. So we thought what we can do with access solar energy so that it will improve their livelihood, so that they are able to do the local value addition. So we came up with a concept, that is called Climate Smart Village, where the complete energy need of the village, whether it is for irrigation, agro-processing, and other, let's say, productive usage, like, some handicrafts, okay, including household, everything will be solar. But one of the big challenge is when you use all these heavy machines, like, from a solar power, and you require storage, the storage is the quite big cost. You cannot, and what will happen, after 5 years or 7 years, okay? So we came up with an innovative technology where all this, productive machines, the heavy power loads, they run only daytime. Because we asked, in fact, how much time you run these machines? They said in a daytime. Anyway, so they were not, and there is no need of really storage, okay? It is only for the households. It requires smaller, storage, which has been done. And we have, after implementation now, in those villages, they are able to process their, mustard, to package mustard oil, and they have created their own brand. So it is processed, it is packaged, and sold. So now, we have already done 10 such climate smart village. And basically, if you look at each of these has a, small power plant, small, 40, 50 kilowatt with a processing unit, and also powering the whole village, correct? Okay, so all the, let's say, any school, hospital, that is also powered from there, okay? But to manage this one, definitely you require, so the APOs are now managing these operations, correct? Okay. And thanks to this unit, let's say the processing units which has been established, now the APO's turnover, within just 2 years has almost become triple.
Thank you. I think that's an awesome example of how the corporate, the specialization that it brings in, how it's leveraging it for social purposes. And that was, before the meeting, I was connecting with Mr. Sahu, and he was showing some pictures of how the change has happened. So maybe after the meeting, whenever you have time, you can catch up with him, and he would be able to share more. But it's an excellent, excellent
just
one.
to this thing. So right now they are not completely not using diesel, for any kind of, let's say, irrigation or agro processing. Okay, so they will definitely not affected by the oil shock which is happening. Of course, I think still there is one component, the plowing. Now we are also experimenting. Can we use a electric powered tractor? Then I think that will be, So I think this is one example we thought I was sharing, but we have some other many.
Thank you so much. Yeah. It's a very wonderful, real example that's happening. But let's go to Mr. Abhejit Agarwal, and let's hear from you about Axis Bank.
Thank you, and good morning to all of you. It's an absolute honor and humbling experience to be here, surrounded by so many stalwarts here. And I understand that in this environment. The first speaker was corporate representative. I'm a corporate representative, and then we'll move to the development sector. I think we should have been the other way around. But let me use that as the, and ma'am, I heard you speak, and honestly, I was just validating a lot of, I think, our own thought processes, how we move. You asked that what have you done on resilience, to paraphrase, and what worked, what didn't. I think the first question you should be asking here is, does corporate understand what resilience in development sector means? Let's start there. And I think, like ma'am, you said, and I'll tell you, see, I'm from a bank, and I've been in the banking sector for the last 15 years. I think banks' boards would be very good at defining, understanding, measuring, that infamous word today, this morning, what resilience is for the banking sector, but how do you translate that to the development sector? I don't think a bank's board or any corporate's board should be expected to do that and provide an answer to that. And I think that's where I think the next phase comes is, I think it's a bridge, first of all, when we talk about resilience, because the way the CSR regulations are designed. See, first of all, the caveat I want to place over here is, CSR is not the panacea for everything, for development. The perspective that gets built is, oh, if we get more funds for this, it will solve for itself. That can never happen. And I think that realization is where we need to start, that when it comes to development, it's like, ma'am, you said so many times, it's everyone's effort. And ultimately, the most important stakeholder is the community itself, the people where you want to work. One of the things I learned early on in my career from my seniors is that, look, we are not messiahs. Okay, nobody is a messiah. So to even tell someone what resilience means to them, I don't even know whether I should even venture in that direction. So how does corporate move? And I'll tell you, this is a very, very complex issue. So I will probably come back. I will gather myself and come back to the space which is more comfortable and I can understand well, is that, and maybe from a perspective of an Axis Bank, all of you know of Axis Bank, you know it's a very large brand. And I think that's really, I think, where the kind of the vision and I think the kind of planning, vision setting for a leadership starts. Because when the CSR committee looks at the kind of funds that banking sector has, when they kind of look at the space in front of them, that is when it's ultimately, like ma'am, you said, it's their vision, their alignment. Should we focus on education? Should we focus on healthcare? Should we focus on everything? And that's where the kind of those questions start. And I think that's where we, at least in my role, we are also guided a lot by then the kind of partners we meet and we build as we go along. I think, like you said, you're a storyteller. Understanding the story, saying the story correctly, it becomes very, very important. So I think we make a lot of effort in finding the right partners, finding the good partners who have that kind of a say. And honestly, they're the real, I would say, definers of what resilience is. Again, I mean, they're also putting themselves in the position where you're defining it for a community of what resilience means. But I think let's start there. And I think that's where good CSR programs can build on, where it is really speaks to what the community really needs. You can do any amount of needs assessment, but like you said, now you cannot measure what dignity means. You cannot measure the kind of little micro changes a family can make with a little more income, perhaps, those kind of things. But I think it all comes from a belief system that if your programs are well defined, if there's a trust between the partner, if there's a trust between the partner and the community, if the government's a very important stakeholder. I think that's one thing I do want to acknowledge here and recognize. So ensuring that the government's a very equal and aligned stakeholder becomes very important to build those kind of resilience. But like I said, I think just to define resilience itself becomes very tough. I try not to do it, and I realize it's not necessary also to do it. So that's where programs often speak for themselves when they're really aligned to what the community needs. Stuff, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing us down that, we are not here to provide all the answers. We may not even understand the questions well. So I think we have our own experiences. I think that's what, so that was very humble submission on your part, sir, to remind all of us that we are not here with all the solutions, but we have our own share of problems as well. And maybe sometimes we contribute to that problem, which is already there. We do not know, but I think it's a good effort. I think to even attempt to do few things. So thank you for that. And let's move to Madam Sharada. So yeah, can you just share your perspectives now?
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really happy that I am there with all of you. I'm looking forward to a very good learning experience. So many thoughts, so many perspectives, and I'm really looking forward to it. I come from an organization which is working on advocacy and community mobilization, two issues which are really which focus on resilience. I see from the previous conversations, I identify two things. One is resilience of the organization which is implementing it, and resilience of the interventions that we are funding, right? So when it comes to resilience of the organization, I feel that one of the major issues is investing in the team. As Sujata ji has said, you have to invest in the leadership, and it is not just in terms of money, salaries, but also in terms of training, in terms of capacity building, in terms of necessary technical support for the organization, etc. And only when the organization has that kind of a leadership will it be able to implement a resilient project at the ground level or whatever. So what does resilience at the ground level mean? It means that we have to work together with the community, with the government and other stakeholders, whether it is media, academia, whatever it is. Because you cannot, like I just give you this example, if I am working on gender and I am working on media, one option for me is to make a good film on gender. But how do I show it? Where do I show it? Do I have the wherewithal to show it on Star TV on prime time? So you may pay me for the film, but will you pay me for the media time? And so it just remains in a corner in my library, and I show it in some small gatherings, etc. But if I talk of, if I want to make it a community or which is owned by the communicators, then I work with the communicators, sensitize them to be more gender sensitive in their communication, and they develop films which, whether it is advertising or it is films, and which has a huge visibility and which has the capacity to reach to the corners of the country. I'll give you the example of Badai Ho Beti Hui Hai, which came long back. When we were working, Sujata ji and all, we are all working on falling sex ratios. And at that time, the advertisement has come, Badai Ho Ladki Hui Hai. And that was, that played on Star TV. It was a promotion for Kaun Banega Crorepati, and it had Amitabh Bachchan. And it went into, wherever the TV went, was accessible, the message was accessible. So what is important for building resilience, or to have your message continue, not just because you are doing it, but many people are adapting it, many people are committed to it and doing something about it, makes the project a lot more sustainable. And even if largely closes today, the kind of influence we had on advertising, films and communicators will continue, because all the industry bodies have already instituted awards for gender sensitivity. They are having training programs for gender sensitization. They are having their own groups like Women in Cinema community, Women in Cinema, and then we have Women in Films by Wange, and there are so many NWMI and so many other organizations which are working for gender sensitivity and gender equality in media organizations. I can't say that I was responsible for it. We did influence them to an extent, and today they're all, Abby has been instituted for gender sensitivity. Imagine the biggest advertisement in biggest award for advertising has a category for gender sensitivity. Scriptwriters Association has started an award for gender sensitivity, then they have made it into women-centric film, whatever it is, but still they are focusing on it. So irrespective of my presence or my organization's presence, the change which has come in the advertising and communication industry will continue, because you see some half-page write-ups on gender in newspapers, which was not the case. When we started largely, when we asked for gender sensitive entries, we got entries which talked about how to paint your nails and keep your husband under control. So that was the level of understanding of gender. And today you see they read such insightful stories about transgender persons, disability, intersectional stories. So what we have done is work with the communicators rather than communicating ourselves. So makes it a broad-based campaign owned by everybody. Nobody wants to give credit to me, I don't care. They say, oh, we wanted to work like this, we know what is gender sensitivity, fine. It's okay, it doesn't matter, but it is owned up. Same thing at the community level also, but I must thank UNFPA for trusting our leadership. Not saying, oh, I want deliverables, I want you to tell me how many things have been done. You know, quantitative indicators they didn't ask. They said, you are an advocacy initiative, work with the communicators, work with the industry. And that freedom has sustained us for 20 years, which has stopped now thanks to changes in the US. So the thing is that we have done that. And that trust is what is important from the funders, whether it is CSR, international funders, whatever it is. We need that kind of a support to engage in conversations, engage in advocacy with the stakeholders. You know, that's very, very important. I find that is often not available. Because you say, oh, what is it? How many films are you producing? It is much easier to get fund for producing a film than to do 3 workshops with the advertising industry. What will you do? What is gender sensitivity? How do you measure it? How do I measure gender sensitivity? There are measures to say what is gender sensitivity, but it is not quantifiable like the number of bags I have distributed or number of toilets I have constructed. It's not easy to actually say, oh, this is gender sensitive. So that is where I feel it's important to invest in the facilitators, in the leadership, so that they work on the issue in a consistent way over a period of years and then bring about change that is sustainable, that goes on irrespective of my presence or absence. Okay? And when it comes to communities and all, it is, I feel we have to have a holistic approach. It's not just communicators who can do it. We have to work with the communicators, we have to work with the industry bodies, we have to work with the community at the grassroots level, we have to work with the academia because the students are coming from there. They are the future leaders, they are the future communicators, not just in media but in their own organizations. Whether as an IAS officer, whatever it is, what is their understanding of gender will affect how it is going to be implemented in the next few years. Same at the community level, it's very important to work with the government, with the community and with the local bodies and available resources like they have done. The native knowledge of the fisherwomen was so important. And we did one project with the, what is it called, poultry, and during COVID, and we just gave them 4 chicks or something, and they have multiplied them because they use the local techniques of multiplying the chicks, and then they have the eggs it is free range eggs, and then during COVID, those tribal women who didn't have any source of income, they sold those eggs to the what you call Anganwadi for Amrut Ahar program, and they was able to sustain. Unfortunately, there was a bird flu and they had to cull all the birds, and that program has come to an end and we are still looking for funders. So, so that is exactly the way, I mean, that is what I see. Sustenance, resilience requires both at the community level, in the project initiatives, how we plan the projects, how inclusive they are, how much are they owned by the people for whom they are meant, and egalitarian democratic processes that are there, and also for the organization which is implementing, we cannot pay 20,000 to MSW field staff and say that you do the work because you are a social worker. No, social work is also a profession. It needs money. He also has to run, she also has to run a family. So don't undermine social worker. फील्ड में काम करते तो 20,000 में करो. It is not going to work. You have to invest in the community. Absolutely, there is no other option as long as this attitude is there that NGO people need less salaries, they can work because they're working from their heart, they will work anyway. It all increases the vulnerability and makes the NGOs ineffective. So with this, I would like to say that.
Thank you so much. I think the challenge that Dr. Sharada brought out is, how to marry systems with sustainable change. I think that is the biggest problem, and also looking at it from a gender lens. I think that is where also it was a very important addition and intervention, very important. So sustainability suddenly disappears with bird flu, and then it is gone. So there are a lot of external factors. I think it's not an easy solution that we may be able to table it, but I think the strength of the community, the way you build the community, will bring resilience. They'll bounce back. I think that is the message that Dr. Sharada tried to bring in. Thank you for that. And let's move to Mr. Prabhakant Jain from DS Group, and how DS Group is dealing with this whole issue of resilience and sustainability.
Okay. As you said, Prabhakant from DS Group. And आपने जो social worker की बात की थी, I taking from that only. I have actually the social work background, and fortunately leading the CSR intervention at DS Group, and spent a good time in around 16 years in DS Group. I started my journey with DS in 2010. Before that, I worked for the NGOs, and it's very different journey for me. Actually, started from the women and child development background to the development project to the CSR, and CSR is also have a different kind of journey before the Companies Act. Even post Companies Act also actually different kind of things are happened. But the topic actually is little bit different. You talk about the resilience. For me, actually the resilience of the corporate or NGO is not that important for me. For me, the community resilience is very important. And taking the words from or example that you have shared about, for me, if the community is able to identify their own problem, and they able to identify the solution for that particular problem, and with the help of the people like us means I'm also CSR people are also from your side also, so they are not coming from the different world, so they are also equally concerned about the development issues and challenges. So with the help of people like us, if we play the role of catalyst with the limited kind of intervention rather than owning the entire intervention. So if we help the community to basically identify the problem, solution, and build their own capacity to deal with that problem, that is the real resilience for us. And fortunately, we did a lot of program. Not everywhere it's possible, but there are certain good examples that actually I can quote here. One example, actually, we were working in Dungarpur district in Rajasthan with the tribal community. Of course, tribal community and women are most favorite community for development sector. They need also, and sometimes it's very natural also founder to basically reach out, because they are not good at human development index, but they have certain positive side also. Recently, I visited the Karbi Anglong in Assam, and I found that if I'm doing certain intervention, rather than creating good for them, I may harm them also, because they are quite sustainable in their life. And because of our intervention, maybe their balance may actually maybe disturb, and we will be responsible for that also. So it's a big dilemma for us also. They don't have electricity, but they have very good natural resources. They have lot of things to basically, they are actually self-sustainable at this moment. Okay, so I was talking about the Dungarpur. So when actually we entered in that particular village, so we found that actually the entire village and the surrounding communities actually brought vegetables from from city, district headquarters coming, and district headquarters getting vegetables from the Gujarat. And I was really surprised. Actually, they have land, they have water, they have lot of resources, but still they are not growing. So we throw the idea with the 10 farmers, and they ready to grow the vegetables. And after 10 farmers, at the end of the project, we completed that project in 2021. More than 800 farmers are growing the vegetable in that particular area. And we were not formed any FPO, any SSG. We just actually gave the input of entrepreneurship training, and we promoted the localization, local market to them. And around 20 villages, people are, or the community is actually brought in, buying the basically vegetable from their own. So the local economy itself is actually quite sustainable, rather than, for example, the entire economy is dependent on diesel, and war is happening in Middle East, and we are impacting in the. So try to build the local economy and local solution. That is very good. Feel there, I think that is the one of the good example. And the second thing is we working on the gender equality initiative, and we thought actually why not sensitize the man community. There are a lot of things are happening around women empowerment, which is good thing, but why can't we work with the man community? Changing their attitude is also very good. That ECF has done good work around that. So we decided actually, why can't we work with the 7 to 11 years of boys? Actually, that is the forming stage. Our value and moral things are actually forming at that particular age. So we look forward for starting that program, and unfortunately, we did not find many organizations are interested in that. So that time we decided to work through our own foundation, and right now around 50 professionals are working on that project in Haryana, UP, and Delhi, and Rajasthan. So that's why actually the cause or intervention is more important for me than the organization, and so that is the resilience. I feel that actually we should think about the community first, and then rest other things can be managed around that.
Thank you. I think you brought in some very interesting. See, sometimes we try to intervene where intervention would actually disturb the setting. That is a very important point that we brought in. I mean, we need to intervene, not necessarily. They're happy with their own ecosystem. But the other issue is about structural poverty. I think that's an important one, because of the unjust structures which have been harbored for years, hundreds of years. What Sujata ji was saying, we have been told, and then we also resign to our fate. There, how do we intervene in order to better the situation and challenge the structural inequality which has been the norm, which has been handed down? I think that was a very important one. The third one was also about developing local solutions. I think that was something that you really brought in, very important. I think at a local level, each space will have its own solutions as well. I mean, you cannot have some solutions created at a larger level and try to implement it there. I think that was a very good input into this discourse. But let's then move to our next speaker. Yeah, please carry on.
Hi, good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me. So, I run an organization called SNEHA, and SNEHA works on health, nutrition, domestic violence prevention, mainly in urban informal settlements and some of the most vulnerable settlements. And, it's interesting when this topic came up, I actually want to say that we actually began to think about resilience and sustainability through one of the mistakes we made, one of the errors we made. So from about 2011 to 14, so as a background, SNEHA was started by a group of doctors. So the mission of SNEHA is to build evidence-based models, whether it's addressing malnutrition, adolescent health, etc. So between 2011 and 14, we implemented this urban child malnutrition program, all of Dharavi. It was one of India's largest urban programs. So Dharavi is divided into 10 zones by ICDS. So we implemented in 10 zones, and at end line, in the 5 zones where we achieved our targeted reduction in malnutrition, we just exited those areas, and we continued in the 5 areas where we hadn't achieved our target. 3 years later, when we were doing the end line of the 3 where we stayed, we came back and said, let's look back at these 5 where we reduced malnutrition, and let's see what's happened to malnutrition there. And to our surprise, actually malnutrition went up above the baseline that we started. And for us, that was a real eye-opener. It was an eye-opener because we realized you cannot implement a program and exit it. Okay? There has to be a planned transition. And that's when every program of ours, we design in a way that we go through 3 stages. The first is what we call the direct intervention, where our teams go in, our frontline workers, we bring about significant improvement in health outcomes. But what it does at that time, it also builds trust of our work in the community. And we find that women who, if you have a malnourished child and the child comes out, or for example, if you're a survivor of violence and now, you've come out of the violence, you want to go and help other people. And we began to identify these people, we call them volunteers, both individuals as well as getting them to work in groups. And we found that that was the way in which we could sustain the change that we made. So in the first stage, we start identifying, building capacity of these people, building agency in them to believe that they can actually make change. In the second stage is what we call a hybrid stage. So typically our first stage is 3 years baseline to end line. The second stage is what we call the hybrid stage. In a hybrid stage, we actually have only 50% or less of our staff. The rest are all community volunteers and government frontline workers. We work very closely with the government, and you cannot build long-term sustainable change without working with the government, bringing about sustainable improvement in the government system as well. So we work on the second stage, and the third is what we call a very low touch, where we have very minimal SNEHA intervention, and bulk of the work is done by community volunteers, government frontline workers, etc. Now the question we ask ourselves is, can we ever completely leave an intervention, right? Absolutely out, no one at all in an area. And we have never done that so far, okay? In fact, what we call it is actually reduced managed transition, because if you completely leave an area, and that's what we learned in Dharavi, the worry is that everything will revert back. So what we do, we actually devised what we call, we did this with Pfizer Foundation as part of a volunteer engagement. We came up with what we call a sustainability framework. So how do we decide as an organization that we even have to move from a direct stage to a hybrid to a low touch? So there is a framework that helps us decide. For example, have we been able to achieve health outcomes? Or for example, have we able to bring malnutrition down to a low acceptable level? Have we been able to strengthen the services from public systems that they sustain at that high level over a period of time? So in any intervention when we enter, only 40 to 50% of the community says we are receiving a particular government service, whatever it is. But by the time we've even finished our stage 1, it's at 80 to 90. So can that be at a 90% plus for a period of time? Then you know that you build some kind of sustainable change within a government. The third is the community volunteers. Are they actually, first of all, taking accountability for their own health, for the issue themselves? Are they taking action? For example, if there's a survivor of violence, are they then accompanying her to a police station? Are they counseling her? So what kind of action are those volunteers doing? Once we feel comfortable that the change, so it's almost like a new level of equilibrium has been set amongst all these stakeholders, community, public systems, and of course finally donors. The donors have to be with us through this journey. And interestingly, we found that there are donors who want to finally reach that higher level of equilibrium that we have envisaged for the community, but the envisaging is not done by us, it's done by the community, by the public system, in collaboration with all of them. So we actually start any intervention by doing what we use a model called appreciative inquiry, where all the stakeholders come and dream for themselves, what is this community going to look like at the end of 10 years? What do we want to see in the community? And once they dream, then they begin to work towards what that dream is. Now, having said all that, it's all very easy to say, we want to make this change, we want to sustain the change. The big point comes in how do you measure the change? And I think Sujata very rightly talked about it. There are, donors expect you, this is not just CSRSC, of the other institutional donors, family foundations, they want measurable metrics. Yeah? And as an organization, we also believe it's important to hold ourselves accountable for change. So while you have a lot of measurable metrics, there are also a lot of deeper underlying changes that happen in a community. So how do you capture that qualitatively through case stories and actually disseminate that widely so that all your stakeholders, and we share our results with all the stakeholders, community, government and donors. And how do these stakeholders also feel about this change that is happening in the long term? Are they also, are women in the community feeling more knowledgeable about what domestic violence is? Do they feel that they can access services more freely? Do they feel they can walk into a police station and file an FIR? Once you have that kind of sense in the community, you feel that, okay, now I've built a new level of equilibrium. And I think that's what we would like to say is sustainable change in a community.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's some very interesting perspectives, right? Can we exit fully is a question, you know. There's a book called How Long is Forever? You know, because NGO will say, I will be with you forever. Now, how long is that forever? You know, that's a very interesting question. And also measuring the immeasurable. There are certain things which probably you cannot really measure, you know, in terms of what has happened. Maybe there are few things can be definitely measured, but not everything. So, how do we hand over? How to also, you know, bring in government into this whole the process that we are talking about, because they are also important stakeholder. I mean, we can't do without them. So I think some very interesting perspectives you have brought in, Ms. Vanessa. Thank you so much. Let's move to our next speaker, Ms. Tushara Shankar from Lupin Human Welfare and Research Foundation. So your perspectives now.
Thank you so much for inviting me here, and also the opportunity to listen and learn from so many learned people with so much experience. If you know, like Mr. Agarwal was saying, if there was an order in which we were sitting corporate to NGO, NGO to corporate, I would be sitting somewhere in between, because I double hat as CSR head of Lupin and also the head of Lupin Foundation, which is an implementing organization with 600 odd people, wherein ma'am, Dr. Sujata, like you said, we are trying to build in democracy and all the right cultures to be able to take to the communities. I am also a social worker by profession. I did my master's in social work, so I can feel all that you were talking about, and we have all struggled. We have been through those phases of learning to work with the systems which kept challenging as to why social workers need to be paid well. So coming from that, I am very fortunate to represent an organization which has believed in resilience right from the beginning. Mr. Agarwal said that corporates have little experience, little understanding of what resilience means in the development sector, and that's why I'll say I'm very, very fortunate, because I have been in the sector for the last 23 years, and that's very small number of corporates that have that kind of an understanding. We have this foundation since 1988. This was not, this was not built or created after the CSR bill to comply with some rules, etc., because the founder believed that the systems at the ground level needs to be worked upon. And why would we are a pharma company, we are a healthcare company. We always worked, for the last 30 years, we worked in the agriculture-based livelihoods, because we believed that, we need to make, if we had to bring a difference on ground, we needed to work on issues that matter the most. And at that point in time, when this foundation was created, obviously until now, a lot of people are dependent on agriculture. At that point in time, it was even bigger. And we continue to work, like she said, there's no withdrawal. We have continued to work in some localities for those many years, for 30 years now. So it's a lot of times I have been asked, does that mean inefficiency? But that's where I think it's very, very important to understand. And we are very fortunate that the corporate, despite asking questions several times about what is exactly your withdrawal plan, but still kind of supports us in taking this over and over again, because everybody fortunately is able to see and understand the transformation that we have been able to build by being with these communities. And like Vanessa mentioned, over stages, the withdrawal, whatever has happened, it's not that we completely leave out, continue to invest very heavily in those communities, but we also do not withdraw completely from them. So we kind of continue that support. We have agriculture-based interventions in which we have, we work on climate resilience. The focus is income enhancement of the farmers, but we are also working on climate resilience, because no long-term agriculture is possible without looking at those aspects. So water use efficiency, soil health improvement, For market linkages, we are working on building community institutions. We all know that FPOs are like literally everywhere, but we are working on building those long-term, sustainable, resilient FPOs and helping them with the right kind of marketing strategies right from the beginning. When we obviously, to align with the CSR compliance, we also create projects. But our programs never end. Like I said, those projects are made and finished and the new project starts. And in that program, in the project, while implementing only, in between we realized that an FPO cannot be strengthened in 3 years' time. It has to be, we need to continue to work with these people to build their capacities and continue to support them over a long period of time. We obviously are right from the beginning trying to build marketing linkages with large companies. We also have some mustard producing farmers in Alwar district in a large number, and they are producing mustard oil, and they have also branded it, and they are selling. But we are collaborating with the likes of Adani and NDDB to build a resilient business stream for the FPOs. Or even in healthcare, we have some work. I represent a healthcare company, so I should mention that. We have work on non-communicable diseases that we are working on for the last 4 years in 2 districts in this country. And we have, right from the beginning, done a MOU with both the state governments. We are continuously working with the entire structure, right from the A&Ms to the directorate in Mumbai. Today also, after this meeting, I am going to Arogya Bhavan to discuss a few things. So we really believe, as like everybody said, that government, the community, and all of that is part of course, resilience is a very long-term effort that both the funders and the implementers need to have a lot of patience for. And fortunately, as a funder and as an implementer, I have the opportunity to do both. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for also sharing that, this whole social responsibility of corporates, even though it was enacted as a law, but there have been organizations who have been, corporate organizations have been practicing as a value. I think that's something very important for us to understand. It's not that there's a compliance requirement therefore, but there have been those organizations, corporate organizations who believe in social change and giving back to the society, irrespective of whether there is a law or in place or not. So, so good that you brought that in, and thank you so much. Let's go to Mr. Mangesh Wange, the CEO and board member of Swades Foundation. This is some interesting work most of you would know, but we'd like to hear from you how you look at this whole resilience.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, I should say. So last 45 minutes is kind of a reflection. I moved from like corporate to social. Same stories with me. 29 years with corporate world. 10 years ago, I shifted to social sector. And in last 4 weeks, I captured my 10 reflections on LinkedIn. And all those things which I'm hearing, I was able to reconnect with those reflections very well. How social sector should look at resilience or evolution, payments, salaries with this thing, mistakes which we made, and I'll share something in next 5 to 7 minutes. So resilience, for us, if you ask me, can we become redundant in that community after some time? And resilience is, in this context right now, as my colleagues have shared, first starts at community level. As NGOs, we have to look at sustainability, resilience for the community. And a couple of stories or instances I would like to share first. About 8 years back, I was in Raleigh City and with Anna Hazare. And we had almost 10-15 vehicles from different villages in Maharashtra visiting them, and he's spending time. We were there observing and listening to him. And after everyone left, then we started discussing, like so many visitors are there every day. How many Raleigh cities have been replicated? He said, that is my concern. लोग आते हैं, बात करते हैं, समझते हैं, जाके कोई तैयार नहीं होता. So that is one. Similar question we can ask about Bhaskar Pere Patil near Aurangabad. So these are Indian stories. At the same time, at Swades Foundation, Ronnie and Zarina have beautifully defined 4E strategy for us. 4E stands for engage. You start with engagement with the community, empower the community, execute projects, and exit. Very beautifully defined. हम corporate sector से आए हैं और Ronnie Zarina भी हम भी बड़े खुश थे. But as Vanessa shared, we also had Swades 1.0 with full जोश, सारे घर के बल्ब बदल देंगे और हम ये कर देंगे. And we end up making few mistakes. So this rural empowerment, which is our model, was becoming rural entitlement for the community. And this we observe while we are doing a lot of good things, we're making one major mistake, which is, and we all use these three terms interchangeably in the sector, and when I say sector, both from corporate side and CSR side, social sector. We say community centric, community participation, and community ownership interchangeably. But to me and our understanding has been, no, it is a journey. Because we cannot say community centric as is equal to community ownership. This is what we realized. We were community centric, then we said, no, इसमें भी कुछ गड़बड़ है. They are not able to sustain certain things, so we should get into participation. Let us involve them in planning. And then we said after a couple of years, no, actually it is community-driven change which actually is at the core of Swades. Swad se bane desh. We make our own country. And that is where, if I told you these two things from Raleigh Siddhi's example and what mistakes we are making, what we came up with very clear understanding, which I think Sujata Madam also shared, is developing local leadership. And that is what, and the whole process of how we did it is long, I'm not getting into that. But the crux was in, so this 2.0 was build local leadership at village level. So from 2,300 villages, we are now active in 1,200 villages. And in 1,000 villages, where community was not ready to take ownership by coming together and taking complete ownership of the projects, we stopped working. In 1,200 villages, and that is our biggest thing today, if you ask me, we have 12,000 volunteers, almost 10 per villages. It ranges 8 to 15. They drive entire development agenda for their village. It's a beautiful process. Our belief has gone up post-COVID. We have seen village after village how this sustainability or resilience has come from them. And there's so many stories where we have done only one intervention and later on community has taken it forward. And what has happened in terms of measurement, as Vanessa also shared, we also have similar examples. Many donors have evolved with us in this belief, in this journey. And we have seen measurements also, impact also, and very heartwarming stories also. For example, we now measure in Raigad, for example, people know, so this is Raigad. Now, actually Raigad, we are kind of saturated. We had almost 280 people in Raigad at 10 years back. Today, hardly 60 people are there. पूरा नहीं छोड़ पाएंगे. पहले हाथ पकड़ा था, अभी उंगली को पकड़ के रखेंगे हमेशा. But what has happened? Our outlay used to be almost 100% in Raigad. Now it is hardly 10%. But what we have started measuring village-wise, government convergence. Community is leveraging. So last year, Swades did almost 100 crores of outlay from our own books. But our communities in 1,200 villages leverage 150 crores. And that we have detailed village-wise. And this is done by our village development committees. And now we are building an ecosystem of Shasan Mitras who are not just trained on what is awareness about various schemes, but how to follow up on documents, which are the source of documents, how to follow up. We are building that cadre now. This is what will create, because resilience is not built during crisis, that is our belief. It has to be built between two crises, right? And any resilient system cannot be on life supporting system forever. So this is where our belief is, so se bane desh, build resilient system at community level. Of course, few voices have been there about taking it to organization level. Of course, that is important. There I can share one more data with you. Almost 10 years back, 90% funding used to be from founders. Now it is 30%. We raised 70% from corporate CSR and donors. So idea is definitely to move towards own sustainability at our level and create that kind of sustainable system. huge change, mindset change is required, of course, at donors level. I still believe a lot of work needs to be done, but they have their own challenge. I have been on that side of the table, so I can understand. So, but in 10 years, I think there is some movement. I think Abhijit mentioned very beautifully. So, इच्छा है सबकी, people करना चाहते हैं, but there are constraints with which corporates and also government, I must add. I think Vanessa mentioned government is a huge player. We have to build with them, but they have their own challenges. You all know very well. But हमें तो रास्ता ढूंढ के बनाना पड़ेगा, because the focus is resilient communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was again very beautiful. Actually, issue. I think one of the things that you brought out is that there are models, but why there is no replication? Or people come and see the models, but they don't replicate, or maybe they're replicating in some ways, but not which is so much visible to us. I think that was a very important one, and also I think the issue is about resources. How you laid down from 100 crores, how the community is itself leveraging more than what the organization is spending. So that's a ROI, if we say in a commercial term. I think that those are also measurable parameters, right? And also you brought in another parameter of from 100 crore now, whatever you have brought it down to substantial level down. So that was something that are practical, doable, and there are things that have been already done. So that is good. I would also like to tell you something which is also critical in today's time. When we say community, when we say we work with the community and sustainability, all these things, I'm reminded of something that happened about 2 months back. So I was going to Western Odisha by road from Raipur, getting into Kalahandi and Bolangir, those districts. And one community worker came to pick me up in a jeep. And it was about 5.5 hours drive, and he and I. And I got my revision of my development education on that road. Because I started asking him, because he works in that area and he's worked there for almost 30 years. And so I was asking him, what is going on here? How long you have been working here? What is the challenges and all that? Now, what he said is very interesting. He said, community. Today we talk about a community. Tomorrow that community is not there. They have all gone in search of work to all the way to Kerala, all the way to Gujarat, all the way to North India. And then they have left behind the families, and then they come back after some time. Even subhuman conditions they live, because there is abject poverty in that area. So I think building that whole ecosystem so that there is livelihood opportunities, so people can be retained and they don't move out, so that you can create a community. He was saying certain case studies, it really broke my heart. I don't want to right now share all that. But that is also another India, or the real India that is there. So it's a very complex situation that we are all in. And so I think what empowerment means, what resilience means, what change would mean, and even withdrawal. So it will also be very region specific, area specific, but lot of rich discussions have already happened here. Your final comments, one sentence each. We'll start from Mr. Mangesh and come this way. Just your final thoughts before we wind up this panel discussion.
I think we're all in it together. Milke kuch kare, let us build on each other's strengths and build a resilient community. Thank you.
Collaboration is the key. I think we all need to collaborate.
I think we should all believe very deeply in we have a strong belief that power lies within the community, and our role is to really help build their agency.
I believe that actually we need to think about the creative and innovative solution for social problems. lot of things are happening in the corporate, but from the development sector, I think that is one of the things that has to be introduced very effectively. So that is my comment.
I feel sustainability, resilience are very nuanced, and then there are different strategies to sort of achieve those, and we really need to learn from each other, understand the context and come up with solutions accordingly, rather than going for one size fits all.
Recognize the symptoms and then learn to recognize the root causes, and always ask the whys of decision making, because that's, I think, what a very important piece towards resilience is.
I think just I would like to say that many NGOs, like you just send a proposal, correct? Okay. But any social, let's say challenge to solve, it requires some technology innovation, okay. And what my request will be to each of the NGOs, okay, because I come from a technology background, okay, and also you must work along with one technology, whatever. Let's say you are working in the health, you don't have health experts. Work with a health company, and then they will help you in building proposals. Okay, so that's the reason now whenever I go, I work with NGOs, I said, we will free of cost will help you in building a proposal, for any climate related things where, energy can be, and we are providing that free service to the NGOs, and only more than happy the NGOs can come, and would like to work with us. I think, it's about not only about the funding, because funding is the easiest thing, and also, of course, I think because I don't see much good proposals, because I was the other side of the table, I don't see many good proposals, and that is where I think the NGOs has to build capacity and then collaborate with, corporates.
Thank you.
Educational institute, I think that's very, very
Thank
key.
you so much. I think the issue is that, copy-paste projects will not work. We need to innovate. I think that's the message that is going on. You think clearly and be contextually relevant in terms of an intervention, which could be with the aid of technology, etc., but have that clarity of thought, collaborate with each other. I think a lot of things which are not necessarily theoretical, but it can be applied. And just to conclude, I think we had a wonderful discussion. It was a wide canvas. We started with the keynote from Sujata ji, regenerating resilience, how, and then you asked some very thought-provoking, deep questions for us to also reflect, how are we investing in organizational sustainability? That also came out here. Are we investing in organizational sustainability? How inclusive or how diverse we are as an organization, whether we are operating with the same value system that we are preaching outside, things like that. But also in the panel, we also talked about exit strategy, measurability, engaging the community, even financial sustainability. Swades Foundation, beautifully you, Mr. Mangesh, Wange, you brought in. Also gender as a very important critical component. Innovation came in, local leadership, engaging youth, lots of very rich conversation. The challenge is how do we translate it into action outside of this room, because the real world was there, right? So lots of things to take back, I'm sure, and a lot of connections to make, and you are making, I'm sure. But like I said, I'll close with a story, since I'm a storyteller. The story is about a lion and a deer. Now, who is the fastest animal? Faster, deer or lion? Lion or deer? Deer? Lion. Lion always believes it's fast, otherwise how will he survive? So, one day, a lion spotted a deer, okay, and started chasing the deer, but the deer was fast and it ran away. And the lion could not catch the deer. So the fox was watching, because fox is always around the lion, because the lion will kill and the fox will eat whatever is left. So lion was So the fox started taunting the lion. He said, you always boast that you are the fastest. But look, this deer outran you and ran away. So how can you claim that you are the fastest? You know what the lion said? Lion said, no, I am still the fastest. It's all about the purpose. I was chasing a meal and the deer was escaping for its life. Purpose is important. We as non-profits, we as change makers, sometimes we are like that lion, okay, एक मील नहीं मिला तो क्या हो गया, देख लेंगे आगे, टाइम नहीं है भाई. There's no time. You know, when we talk about environment, we're talking about what is going on. Are we really thinking that, you know, we are almost approaching doomsday? Do we know that? Is that urgency as non-profits, as change makers, do we have that urgency in us? And that's the question. Or are we still the lion? Okay, चलो ठीक है, देख लेंगे, नहीं तो और कभी कर लेंगे, आगे देखेंगे, वो time नहीं है. That's the message. There's an urgency knocking at our door, and therefore this whole funding resilient systems and role of philanthropy in building sustainable future is therefore so critical. Thank you very much. Wonderful panel. A big round of applause for the panel for doing a wonderful job, and also a very enriched audience. And thank you so much for this time. It's over to our host.